So I went up the shop to go and get myself another lemon and a lime because I didn't have enough. And then my hunger struck, so I bought a large bag of bacon. So I'm going to eat this before we start. Bacon. Hello homebrewers, and welcome to my channel. So today we are doing the first of a wild yeast / spontaneous fermentation, or brewing with no yeast. It's, spontaneous. I've went and picked some elderflower. It's the first of the season's elderflower, and it smells gorgeous. My whole house smells of elderflower and slightly of bacon. So it works rather nicely. So who knew? Elderflower bacon could be a thing. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked. We're going to be hopefully creating elderflower champagne with no added yeast. So I'm going to get set up and we're going to get started. So I've got the first part all set up and I'm going to explain what I'm doing. So we've got our elderflower. Now there is approximately 6 heads of elderflower. Some of them are a bit smaller than others, but it's about 6 heads, which is cool. So when you're making elderflower champagne, a lot of times people use hydrometers and stuff like that. I wanted to make this as simple as possible. So instead of using a hydrometer, I'm using weight. So I have measured out 500 grams of sugar. This lovely sugar right here. Just cheap, ordinary white sugar. Now 500 grams of sugar divided by the quantity I'm making, which is 1 gallon, is 100 grams per litre, which is approximately 5% if it ferments to dryness. But since this is a wild wine, anyone can make it, so I'm making it as simple as possible. So for this recipe, you may notice that I have 6 citrus fruits. 3 limes, 3 lemons. That is kind of a lot of citrus, but I'm not going to be using vinegar. Pretty much all the recipes use vinegar. The reason they use vinegar, which no one seems to know, is it raises the acidity and prevents the growth of mold. Adding more citrus to it, much better. You get a much more zingy citrus taste without having to add vinegar. You can if you want, but at the same time, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take off the rind. I will get a peeler. I will get one. But in the meantime, I'm going to be using a knife and just taking off the outside carefully to try not to get as much of the white as possible. So I'm going to do this on all of the lemons and the limes. Joy. So I've gone through and I have taken off the outside of the lemons and most of the limes. There's a few little sort of brown patches that I didn't want to add in, and I don't have to, so I won't. But I've got quite a lot of rind here. This is where most of your citrus flavour is actually going to come from. So just bear that in mind. This is for the acidity, the actual juice. The lemon flavour and the lime flavour comes from the rind, or the peel. So before we start putting things in a bucket, I'm going to take the time and I'm going to juice my lemons and limes. Now obviously if you have a juicer, you can do that. I'm just using a strainer and squeezing and attacking, which is pretty cool. So all my lemons and limes have been peeled and juiced, and there's quite a lot in there. So now comes the fun part. We're going to add this all in to our fermenter. The lemon and the lime peel really release their flavour when you boil them. This has been sterilised. If you don't have a bucket, you can use a pan with a lid and stick a tea towel over it. You won't want to put it in your fermenter straight away, or it will puke everywhere and then you'll get told off. So what I'm going to be using for my yeast nutrient is actually the yeast nutrient experiment that I made, making my own yeast nutrient. I found out that worked the best using bread yeast. So in theory, wild yeast is as close as you're going to get to bread yeast. So I'll stick the link to that video at the top there, so you can check that out. Now the reason I'm adding the boiling water is 1, for the lemon and lime, and 2, it's easier to mix in our sugar. So in goes a cheeky litre of boiling water. Since this is all oiled, Mix in the sugar, and try not to drop it everywhere. Ooh, that smells lemony. Put a lid on that. Now move this out of the way and we're going to prepare the elderflowers. As usual, the batteries ran out at the most irritating time, so bucket, it's still nice and warm, it's still too warm to put our elderflowers in, but we need to prepare our elderflowers because apart from the flowers that then turn into the elderberries, everything else is pretty much poisonous. So just be warned. So you just go through, I'm using a pair of scissors, lovely clean stuff, and a lovely plate, and I'm just snipping off as much of the green as possible. Otherwise you end up with that gnarly taste. It tastes of plant and not elderflowers, so I'm just going to go through. And it also gives me enough time to check all the pretty flowers. So I'm going to cut into these, and I'll see you once I'm done. Get off. So I spend a bit of time going through and taking off the vast majority of all this green stuff. I mean, I have done it and left most of this green on, but it has a weird taste to it. Tastes like elder tree. So I've just taken the extra step and removed as much of the green as possible. Yeah, there is still going to be some, but at the same time it's minimal. There's a small amount. So what we're going to do now it's all been processed, is we want to put it in a lovely brew bucket, or if you don't have one, a pan with a lid. But our stuff's still a bit warm. That smells really good. So I'm going to water it down using just tap water. And that's 2 litres. And I'll come back once I've filled this up to 5 litres. See you in a minute. So I've now topped this up to the 5 litre mark, or approximately the 5 litre mark. Everyone knows from my last strawberry wine video, it didn't kind of go well. It was slightly more than I intended. So I've got my elderflowers, and these are the only things that aren't sterile. Everything so far that's been added to this has been scorched and sterilized, including my spoon. So in these go. So hopefully, if this goes well, there we go. If this goes well, the wild yeast that's on these elderflowers should hopefully inoculate it, and it should start brewing. Now with the extra acidity from the lemons, we should also manage to inhibit mold growth. Hopefully. So just stirring these all in. And just because I'm cool and I want to know, now I've got everything in place. You don't have to do this, it's just for curiosity. Just going to give this a minute to dry, and I'm going to take a look. So I've put a little picture up there of the pH. You don't have to do the pHing, it was just, I was curious to see what it came out at. Somewhere around the 3.5, 3 to 4 pH, which should be enough to inhibit the growth of mold. So wild yeast, spontaneous fermentation, while it can have great results, it also has terrible results. You can make vinegar. So we may have made vinegar, but we don't know. So I hope you join me in about 3 days' time, where we get to check on this and do the next part. So yeah, I hope you liked my take on elderflower champagne using no homebrew equipment, which is weird. So don't forget to comment, rate, like, share. Sharing is caring. And check out some of the other videos. And carry on homebrewing. See you later.